So the video for today was originally very different. Today it was meant to be just a top 10 best games for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. But as I was whittling down the list, it quickly, became apparent that, it's mostly a, RPG list for the Super Nintendo for myself personally. So I decided to make this into two separate videos. I'm going to do a video with just, my most favorite Super Nintendo games, and then I'll make another video with, all the other genres in it. And, instead of a top 10 list, actually this is going to be a top 7 list because, there's some, Super Nintendo RPGs that I did play back in the day and that I did love, but oh my God, it's been like 20 years since I'd played some of these games and I can't remember them that well. I know I enjoyed them, but I just feel like I can't do them justice. And I just didn't want to read about them on Wikipedia or whatever and try and jog my memory. I feel that doesn't do them justice either. So I just settled on 7 Super Nintendo RPGs that I remember well, that I've played many times over the years, and that I have a lot, to say about, and that have a lot of nostalgia for me. And when I'm talking about this list, and by no means is this a definitive list. This is just my opinion. This is just my opinion on what are the best Super Nintendo RPGs for me, because I'll have, certain memories of playing them. I was very young when the Super Nintendo came out. I was only, oh my God, I was like, 8 years old? Freaking, somewhere between 8 and 12 years old is when I was really starting to play the Super Nintendo. So, I was obviously a very different person back then. So my gaming tastes have changed, but I still have those memories when I was young for a lot of these RPGs, and that makes them extremely special. And a lot of them, having replayed them, many times over the years, they still hold up incredibly well, nostalgia or not. So anyway, this is my top 7 Super Nintendo RPGs. Let's get started. Secret of Mana 2. Yes, I know it's called Trials of Mana now, but for so many of us, for so long, it was Secret of Mana 2. It was the Mana game that never made it to North America. We would hear how it was an excellent game. It improved on, the original Secret of Mana in so many ways, and we were just chomping at the bit to get it. And it was supposed to come over here, which was the other thing. Trials of Mana was supposed to come over to North America back in the day, but one thing led to another, and it was never released here. So I know, people will be like, technically this isn't, this shouldn't be on your list because it wasn't actually released in North America, but it's still a Super Nintendo game. And yes, I emulated it, but it's so good. It deserves to be on this list. I was very young when I heard of Secret of Mana 2's existence. The internet, wasn't as easy to use, didn't know anything about emulation. So, I'd heard about this game, wanted to play it, but then years went by, and then I ended up, actually seeing screenshots of it and seeing videos of it. I'm just like, oh my God, I need to play this game. I need it in my life. How can I play it? And then eventually the fan translation came out, was able to, download the game. The first game I ever emulated. So that was a whole learning experience, learning just how to emulate games on the PC. And, after years of hearing about how good this game was, obviously, is it going to live up to the hype? Is it going to be as good as everyone says? And holy cow, was it ever. It was an incredible game. It was just like the original Secret of Mana. You had 3 party members, you have dual co-op, but in this game, you have the added benefit of picking, 3 of 6, very different characters in terms of how they, fight, enemies, and in terms of the skills they have. And then you have the whole class tree system where you can have, light classes and dark classes. And then, depending on how you go on the skill tree, you can mix them up once in a while. And they were all very different from one another with very different moves and abilities. And it made the replayability for that game so high because, obviously being able to pick different characters, you obviously got different story routes and different story branches you can go off into with, different end game bosses. So the replayability for, Trials of Mana was incredibly high, and it made you want to go back at least, 3 times so you could see all the different bosses and stories and how they panned out. And the characters in it were incredibly lovable. Some of them are absolutely iconic, some of, Square Enix's most popular characters to this day. And I only did play it, the one playthrough when I did emulate it, but then eventually we finally got the collection of Mana in North America. and Trials of Mana was officially translated, and it felt so good to play that game, you know, with a official translation on my big screen TV, not having to play on the PC. And it was just a dream come true that a game, you know, that was been missing for what, 20 years could finally make it to North America. And it just makes me incredibly hopeful for the future for other games that have been left behind, you know, like the Mother series is a perfect example of people wanting Mother 3 to make it over. Trials of Mana is a great game, but part of its charm is just the journey this game has taken to make it to North American audiences, you know, from being, you know, having a planned release to not being released to being, you know, the first game I emulated along with other people to finally making it over here 20 years later, part of a collection, and then with an excellent remake following shortly behind, was just a dream come true for RPG fans. And, you know, it's part of the reason why it's my number 7. Ogre Battle, Episode 5, March of the Black Queen. Ogre Battle is a series I've wanted to talk about, you know, on this channel quite a bit, you know, especially because I have Suikoden fans on this channel. And Ogre Battle is, you know, it's a series of games. It's an unfinished saga, very much like the Suikoden series is. You know, it has an overarching plot. You know, it has characters appearing in multiple games. And, you know, the stakes are a lot more focused. You know, it's very much focused on saving one's country, you know, very much like the Suikoden series is. It's not about, you know, true love or saving the world, you know, and there's a lot of politicking going on as well, which is something I always really enjoy. And the world building is fantastic. And another reason why this series is so good, so it was made by the developer Quest. And Quest had 2 very special people working at it while these games were being made. And the first is Yasumi Matsuno, who a lot of you probably know for being the creator of Final Fantasy Tactics. You know, Square Enix, he went to work at Square Enix after the first 2 Ogre Battle games were released. You know, and if you've played his games, you know, like Vagrant Story, Final Fantasy 12, you know, he likes to have like more focused narratives with a lot of, you know, political intrigue going on. And that's very much the Ogre Battle series as well. And then also the artist for this series is Akihiko Yoshida, who also, you know, did work on Vagrant Story. He's done work on the Bravely Default series. Like those 2 are very much a pair, and they've, you know, collaborated on a lot of games together. But aside from, you know, Final Fantasy 12 and Vagrant Story, the Ogre Battle series is a, you know, a tactical role-playing game series. And if you like tactical role-playing games and you haven't played the Ogre Battle series, you got to get on it. They are fantastic games. But Ogre Battle, March of the Black Queen specifically has so much to offer. You know, it has excellent sprite work in this game. You know, when you encounter enemies out in the field, you're essentially set up on a board, and it's almost like they're chess pieces. And you're the tactician for your army, and you're seeing how your units are, you know, are making out against the enemy. You know, it gives it that, you know, you're the tactician feel when you're in combat. And, you know, the armies you can create in this game, it's just, you know, it's a fantasy playland. You can have like, you know, ninjas fighting with paladins. You can have liches and fairies fighting together. You can have, you know, ghosts and mermaids. You can create the fantasy army of your dreams in this game. It has recruitable characters with interesting backstories, aside from, you know, the regular units you can create and name yourself. It has, you know, a tarot card system, which you're able to use at the beginning of the game, which very much sets the flavor for your main protagonist. And it has, you know, varying endings for the game. You know, has a lot of replayability because you can go straight up evil or you can be good, you know, using the reputation system that the game has. You know, so you have different story options you can do as well. And there's optional maps that you don't have to participate in if you just want to do the game for the main story as well. And a lot of these optional maps have like really powerful, you know, recruitable characters or units in them as well. So they're absolutely worth doing. So all in all, if you love tactical role-playing games, you know, with a politically driven narrative, you know, and the ability to like create, you know, the army of your dreams, like samurai, ninja, knights, fairies, liches, ghosts, dragons, beast tamers, just like all that cool ass shit. And you can just like mix and mash it all together, and you can be, you know, a total paragon, or you can be a total badass and the most evil fucker ever. And then, and it's, the first part of an epic saga. Even though it is unfinished, the saga is so good, and it's so rewarding to go to the, the next games, and, seeing characters from the old ones pop up, and, overarching plot threads still being addressed. And it's so sad because, it's not like Suikoden is, that's owned by Konami, who has no plans of doing anything with it ever and who don't make games anymore. It's owned by Square Enix, the Ogre Battle franchise. But unfortunately, very much like Suikoden, when Murayama-san left that series, they didn't really know what to do with it. In terms of, the next games that came after 3. That's why they did prequels, because they really didn't know how to carry on with the story. They didn't know how to deal with the whole Harmonia thing and the overarching plot that Suikoden had. So they did prequel games, and then eventually they just created completely new games and brand new universes, and they didn't do as well because people weren't invested in those games. Whereas the Ogre Battle very much the same thing, unless Yasumi Matsuno came back. I feel by and large they wouldn't really know where to go with this series because his hands are all over it. Which is really sad. They could do side stories and stuff, but I would love to see, we have Ogre Battle episode 5, which is March of the Black Queen, episode 6, which is Person of Lordly Caliber for the Nintendo 64. And then we have, Tactics Ogre Let Us Clean Together for the PlayStation, and then remade excellently for the PSP because Yasumi Matsuno came back and helped with that remaster. So no, definitely a series worth trying, and I replayed the crap out of this game. So check it out. Super Mario RPG, not for a single second did I think this game would not be good. Mario had never been in an RPG format before, but it was being made by Squaresoft. And a large part of this list is Squaresoft games, and I knew it would be good. I just didn't know how good it would be. It took Mario and put him in a fully realized RPG world. It had interesting original characters. Gino, for example, one of the most beloved Mario characters of all time, and probably at this point in time, the most requested Smash Brothers player as well. I'd be shocked if they didn't put Gino in eventually. Just because he is so highly demanded. But no, for Super Mario RPG, you had an excellent turn-based battle system, with, you could input commands, you had to time jumps or time kicks perfectly, or you'd have or to mash the button to do fireballs. It was like very interactive. And then the world outside of the battle system, there were still the platformer elements, and there were secrets to find, hidden blocks and hidden areas, and a fully realized 3D environment. And it all meshed together so well. And the story was good too. Bowser was the villain at the very beginning of the story, but all of a sudden you got all these new characters coming in, and they were awesome and fully realized. And it makes me wonder why Nintendo is so hesitant to allow, Intelligent Systems or whoever else is working with the Mario RPG franchise to create new characters, because by and large they do an excellent fucking job. And that's why the Paper Mario series has gone south. It's because they're not, they have this chokehold on creators now when it comes to the Mario universe, which they shouldn't. They have oversight, but allow them to flex their creative muscles once in a while. But no, Super Mario RPG, an amazing adventure. Just shows that cooperation between game developers can really lead to some excellent games. Secret of Mana. I was hooked as soon as this game started. Yes, it does have, some mechanical issues or whatever in terms of the game design, that haven't held up particularly well. But at the time, holy fuck, honestly. You have 3 different characters. It was the first time I ever saw co-op in an RPG. And you had, varying different weapons you could use, some of them with different range and different uses, and you could upgrade them. The upgrade system was awesome to behold. You see your weapons change color, and as you upgraded them. And you had the magic system and the elemental spirits that you could, gain throughout the journey. They were very well designed, and the spell effects were really cool. Super overpowered, don't get me wrong, but super fun to use, nonetheless. And the music was also fantastic. And then you eventually in the game, you're able to, traverse the world map with your own dragon, Flamey, which I thought was just so badass as well. But no, Secret of Mana stands the test of time. It's an excellent game, especially with the co-op option, that is still available in the original version. And I believe the remake had co-op as well, even though it is the inferior version in my opinion, just because it would crash all the time. It didn't get the same treatment that, the Trials of Mana remake did, unfortunately. But no, Secret of Mana, excellent game. Love the action RPG elements. And it's a quick, linear, but concise journey, and you can replay it within 20 hours, if that. Just an excellent game through and through, and I'll never forget my time playing it. Oh, excellent game. Final Fantasy IV, otherwise known as Final Fantasy II in North America. This is the game that got me into gaming. Don't get me wrong, I had a Nintendo Entertainment System, had Mario Brothers for it, some of the early Mega Mans, whatever, what have you. But Final Fantasy IV is the game that got me into gaming. I remember watching my older cousin play it, and I remember the excellent sprite work and the badass spell effects that were happening while he was playing it, and seeing parts of the story. And he was partway through the game, and I was hooked. I needed to play it. And I remember, loading the cartridge in, seeing that intro sequence with Cecil, when he was stealing crystals, and it had the Mode 7 technology to enhance the spell effects and to give, the airship travel that more dynamic feeling to it. Oh, the intro sequence, I was immediately hooked with that game. And the other thing about Final Fantasy IV that sticks with me to this day is its story. It was the first game I ever played that had, a comprehensive, well thought out, well paced, and just honestly intriguing story. The twists and turns that would happen in it. There were character deaths in it that I was just, devastated to behold. You would have the highest highs and at times the lowest lows. And with good reason. I think it's the most remade Final Fantasy Square Enix has. It was, obviously the Super Nintendo, then it was remastered for I think the Game Boy Color or the Game Boy Advance. I can't remember because I never played that version. But then it was remade completely for the DS, and then it was remade completely for the PSP. It's a cash cow, and I can see why. It's a timeless classic, and every character was unique in this game too. Not everyone could cast magic or use certain abilities. Every character had a specific thing they could do, and it just enhanced their characterization and their personality. And it had some of the most epic sequences in gaming. When you get a very certain whale ship and you go to a very certain location for the first time, and the music that kicks in, holy fuck, the music for this game. The battle theme and some of the boss themes by themselves are absolutely incredible, and some of the best in the entire genre. Final Fantasy IV is a game I've replayed multiple times, and it's a game I will continue to replay multiple times. And and even just the, fighting the elemental bosses, the 4 elements, and how epic those sequences were. Obviously, crystals and elements, elemental bosses and spirits and stuff. It's all super cliche stuff now, but at that time, for someone who's just getting into RPGs, it was like a brand new concept, and it was just something that blew my fucking mind. And it is a game that will, always be near and dear to my heart because it's what got me into gaming. It's what made me a gamer. And I think, of all the games to make you a gamer, I think Final Fantasy IV is a good one to do that for you. Chrono Trigger. You knew this one was going to be on the list. How could there be a top whatever list of SNES RPGs and Chrono Trigger not be on it? And it's here. And there's so many reasons why. It's made by the Dream Team, Hironobu Sakaguchi, Yoshinori Katase, art by Akira Toriyama, music by Nobuo Uematsu. Yuji Horii, the Dragon Quest, series lead and creator. You know, all hands were on deck for this game. And it wasn't even Square Enix yet. It was just Squaresoft still. So Enix just came on board for a collaboration and decided to work with them together. And holy fuck, was the end result fantastic. So you got a time traveling RPG that kind of like looks like Dragon Ball. And the time traveling aspect of the game is fucking aces. You know, they handle it incredibly well. It's woven into the narrative, you know, seamlessly, easily. It's not forced, you know, and it works with the gameplay mechanics so well. And when you travel to different epochs, you know, and you affect things in these different eras, and it has, you know, effects in the future, you know, it's all done so well. And the side quests in the game, you know, for the ones that they're really well done, you know, and they're super rewarding. And the characters, there's not a poorly done character in this game, and they are all super unique. And when it comes to the combat system, holy fuck, you got like the dual text and the triple text, and your characters working together, and you can play with different party combinations, you know, to see which characters have like the best moves, you know. And not only are characters super unique in battle, they're all super fleshed out in the game's story, and they're so endearing, you know. And it's a game that I can easily go back to. It's probably my most replayed RPG ever. Why? Because it had the New Game Plus system, which I had never seen before, and I don't think it had ever been done before. You know, according to my knowledge anyway. But it was definitely the first game I'd ever played with the New Game Plus, and I played the crap out of it. I had never played a game before, especially an RPG, where I can start at the beginning and just like kick the shit out of everything in my way. And I loved min-maxing all my characters' abilities, because when you would max them out, they wouldn't have a number, they'd have a star beside them being like, oh, you've maxed out, you know, strength or agility or magic or whatever. And I loved doing that shit. And then plus, another reason to replay this game is it had multiple endings. You know, if you replayed it again in New Game Plus, you could, you know, face Lavos, the end boss, immediately. And you'd have vastly different and sometimes hilarious endings. So no, Chrono Trigger was just firing on all cylinders. The music, once again, Nobuo Uematsu, that main theme, as soon as it kicks in, you just knew you were in for a special journey. You knew you were in for a fucking wild ride, and it wouldn't stop. And as soon as the game gets going, it doesn't stop. You know, from beginning to end, it's just super well paced, and it's hitting all those high notes, and it's hitting those low notes too, those sad notes. You know, you know, what else is there to say about this game? It just, the dream team came together and they absolutely delivered. Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy VII are constantly battling for supremacy in my mind of which is the best Final Fantasy. You know, lately it's been Final Fantasy VII, because Final Fantasy VII Remake came out this year, and it's still my game of the year. So, you know, Final Fantasy VII is very much in the forefront of my mind, and I am constantly thinking about it, but Final Fantasy VI is always there, just fighting back. You know, there's so much nostalgia there and so many good memories, and the gameplay is excellent, that it's always 6 and 7 that are fighting for supremacy for the Final Fantasy series in my mind. And Final Fantasy VI, once again, as soon as the game starts and you get that, you know, that credit crawl, and you're marching in your matchstick armor towards Narsh, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, and I know I won't be the last person to say this, but that intro sequence when that fucking music kicks in, god damn it, amazing, incredible. And Final Fantasy VI was very much, you know, the old guard being there, and like, you know, some of the new guard coming in, for example, like Tetsuya Nomura, because he did character designs for Setzer, the Gambler, and Shadow the Ninja. And holy fuck, when I saw Shadow for the first time sitting at the bar, and he got like that character intro on the bottom, kind of letting it be known like, oh, you're gonna be able to recruit this guy, I was in fucking heaven. He was a badass ninja with a fucking cool ass dog, god damn it. And then the story for Final Fantasy VI, like amazingly well done. You know, you have a very linear story for the first half of the game. You know, it puts you through the paces. It's well paced. It's super engaging. It's super tragic. It's dark. You know, you have, you know, the tragedy of the world with the rise of an empire. And you learn about, you know, the tragic fate of the Espers and, you know, the War of the Magi. It's just, super well done, and gets you right into the world, and the world is crafted beautifully. Then after you've done the first part of the game, you get to the second part of the game where, obviously it's much more open world. You can go wherever and do whatever you want. So the pacing's not there, but holy crap, the way they handle the second half of the game and you being able to go wherever you want, whenever you want, amazingly well done. And it all ends off with the finale against arguably the best Final Fantasy villain of all time. And I actually will say for myself personally, Kefka is the best Final Fantasy villain of all time. And he's a tragic character too. He's part of an experiment. He ends up going insane. It doesn't excuse his actions. He's just an absolute narcissistic sociopath with the best laugh ever. There's just something about an evil clown. There's just something about him. I don't know what it is, but phenomenal villain. And while he is incredible, and he is, the shining star when it comes to characters in this game, the main cast is great too. You have the twin brothers, Edgar and Sab, and you have our main character, arguably Terra. And then, Celis and Locke and Gao and, all these other characters, Cyan, like, oh my God, all the characters are, super unique aesthetically. They have their own backstories. They don't feel as unique as maybe, say, Final Fantasy IV because of the magic system in this game. You have the Magicite system. All your characters can learn magic. So they lose some of their individuality because of that, but they still have a very unique flavor to them because they do have their special abilities, like Shadow's Throw or Edgar's Tools or Sabin's Blitz command. And it was just, it actually, as much as it did maybe make the characters blend together a little bit, I did love the magic system in this game. I loved being able to have the freedom to create, characters with certain types of magic and being able to mix and match like that. I did like the Magicite system, and I loved the whole tragedy and the story behind the Magicite system. That made it super compelling to me. So no, Final Fantasy VI just, it had it all. It had a great story. It had super interesting characters. It had, a great game design with a linear first half and an open world second half. It has the best fucking Final Fantasy villain of all time and one of the best villains of all time, period, in a game. It had that darker tone to it as well. It had super low lows, but then it had like those great moments of triumph as well. And it was just like a meeting of the minds when it happened with, all the Square Enix staff, or all the Squaresoft staff that happened to be employed at that company at that time. And it's just a testament to the genre, and as much as I say it is the best RPG on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, it's arguably the best RPG of all time for a lot of people, So, and it's definitely, in my top 5. Absolutely. So, Final Fantasy VI, an amazing experience. If for whatever reason you haven't played it, you got to play it. And all the games on this list, are tribute review status for this channel. I'd love to go back and play all these games and do a tribute review for them because they're all just so damn good. So no, this has been my top 7 list, and there are other games I played like Breath of Fire 2, Lufia 2, and there's games that I just can't remember them that well, so I feel like I can't do justice when I talk about them. And then there's Earthbound and Final Fantasy V, games I played but I never finished, and because I didn't finish them, I feel like I couldn't include them in this list. So there are games I need to go back and finish, because with Super Nintendo, I was very young, I was a child. And it's not like today when I can go out and buy and play whatever I want. I was very limited in terms of the games that I could, get my parents to buy for me, or I could save up and buy myself, or that I was just aware of. Because, information just wasn't as readily available, and I wasn't, buying all the magazines I should buy, and the internet was very much just, becoming a place to go to for information. So Super Nintendo, there's still a lot of games for it that I haven't played that I should play, like Shadowrun or like the Ys series I only got into recently because of all the remakes they're doing for the older games that I never played on the Super Nintendo. So the Super Nintendo is a magical system. It's in my, top 3 systems of all time. Absolutely. Because it was the one that made me into a gamer, And, I'm looking forward to doing, another video for, the best Super Nintendo games non-RPG edition. Give the RPGs, their own video, because that is my genre by and large. It's the one I care the most about. So what do you guys think? What's your list, you know, of your top 7, top 5, top 10 RPGs for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System? Fuck, what a good system. Anyway, thanks for joining me for this game break, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something new, and maybe you heard about a game you haven't played before, and maybe you're going to try it now. Anyway, thanks again for joining me. See you later.